Hi everyone, my name is Davis. I'm in marketing with Blue Dot Games, and I'm here with.
My name's Tony Gillham, and I am the CEO of Blue Dot Games, and this is.
I'm Sturt Jeffery, and I am 83's lead designer.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad you guys can come. We are all different hours, so we're gonna go right into the FAQ. So, what's 83?
Yeah, so 83 is, as we've widely spread, 83 is a multiplayer, large-scale shooter using accessible realism and a altered history setting to provide a fun and exciting mil-sim-esque experience for our players.
And what do you mean by mil-esque? Accessible realism is a big pillar with you guys, yeah?
Indeed. So accessible realism is something that we've stuck with, or something certainly I have been using throughout the games I've designed over the last 15 years. And essentially it means that we try to make the experience as realistic as we can up until the point that it stops being fun. And then we wind it back a notch. And that's the accessible part of accessible realism. So we want people to feel like they're having an enjoyable time in a realistic game, but we also want it to be something that anybody can pick up and get used to after a few matches, and broaden that player base and really pull in as many people as possible as something that they might not otherwise be willing to give a try to.
Awesome. And you guys have worked on other projects. I know, Tony, you've worked on other accessible realism projects. Have you as well?
Yeah. In fact, I just want to sort of look back to what Sturt was saying about 83. Because in various forms and guises, Sturt and I have been working on the same projects for over a decade, for sure, going all the way back to about, I think, 2007, something like that.
Very close to 15 years.
Yeah, it's like being joined at the hip. It's like a kind of fairly dysfunctional marriage, huh?
Wouldn't go quite that far, but sure.
Oh, mate, I wanted to make it official, you know. All right. Anyway, no, the thing, what I wanted to talk about regarding the design of 83 is more sort of related to previous subjects, like, for example, Rising Storm, which both Sturt and I worked on, and which led to the founding of Antimatter Games, and also on Rising Storm 2, which Sturt obviously had the sort of lead design role there as well, is that they presented to the world asymmetrical combat, which was something that in the past had been really, really hard to pull off. And I think that was really sort of got my attention in terms of, wow, this guy can design stuff, particularly with Rising Storm. I just thought, wow, yeah, this is something that
It's an incredible game.
Yeah, and really difficult to pull off when you've got such different sides. Now, it's for 83 that's gone in a slightly different direction, I feel, in that, you know, it's heading for the Cold War. And I did actually ask a few questions about, so why the Cold War? What's so special about, you know, that period of time? Why not World War II? Why not the latest sort of most modern kind of warfare with all the, you know, bells and whistles that you can attach to your weapons and all that? And yeah, I think it might be worth sort of mentioning that to people.
Yeah, so as I said to you, you know, it's about doing something that's a little different for a start. So as people who are watching may not and listening may not know, but the first game we worked together on was Darkest Hour, which was World War II. And then it was Rising Storm, which was World War II. And then it was content for Red Orchestra, which was World War II. If you're starting to see a bit of a pattern here. And even before Rising Storm 2 came along, what we actually had pitched and expected to work on was more of an Italian front or Western Europe game again, which was pivoted later when Tripwire decided they wanted to do something a little different. That's why it became Vietnam. But the most important thing with 83 was not retreading old ground. And so, you know, why not World War II? Well, we'd done it over and over and over again. And there's only so many ideas you can have there. And of course, we also expect that at some point Tripwire might want to continue their franchise, which would be another World War II title to try and compete against. And we didn't think that was the smartest thing. So we sort of looked forward. And so people sort of say, well, why not modern times? You can do all of this stuff, but that's also a niche that's been very well filled. And it's a lot harder to do the accessible realism level when you do go fully modern, when everybody's got scopes, everybody's got red dot sights, everybody's got all these attachments. It becomes very difficult to balance. It becomes a lot less about the intensity of combat and more about dying before you know what's hit you. So something we did learn through the development of Rising Storm 2 was that there is this little sweet spot where you've got modern-ish. They're weapons that have recognizable modern tendencies, but without all of the extra stuff that goes with them. So they still act a little bit more like those older pieces of kit. You're still using iron sights in most cases, even though they might be fully automatic or semi-automatic. They still have limitations that are closer to what we've done in the past, and we felt it was an easier area to balance, and also it's quite an underutilized space. So there are plenty of games doing modern stuff. There's very few doing Cold War, and it just seemed like that perfect match of all the elements that
there we go.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, one of the things you mentioned with the iron sights that I always really liked was when I was playing Rising Storm, you could always like zoom in a little bit extra, and like that, those little touches I always really enjoyed, because everyone wants a scope, but you gave the player a little, okay, if you focus in, you could like kind of get just a little more, especially when you're in the trees and everything. It's hard to see.
That's the kind of thing that comes from about 15 years of working on this stuff, really, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
So I guess another big thing, so like you guys were talking about jumping, it feels so natural to go right into the Cold War area, because you guys are going from the Vietnam to now Cold War, and you guys touched on like you guys were talking about doing like vehicles. I think we had a trailer talking about vehicles, and do you think that it's going to be like vehicles like in Rising Storm vehicles, or are you trying to tread something different, or is it still undecided?
No, absolutely like Rising Storm.
Rising Storm 2, I guess we mean here.
Yeah, well, a little bit like both, I guess.
Right.
Rising Storm 2, they weren't the same sort of vehicles. Obviously, Rising Storm had no vehicles.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say.
Red Orchestra had its tanks and its cars.
Yeah.
And Rising Storm 2 went with helicopters. But when I was designing the helicopters, at the time there was a lot of pressure to make them more casual, make them simpler. And I pushed back very hard, because I felt like if the infantry combat is in a certain point between hardcore realism and casual, then any vehicle combat should be at that exact same point in the spectrum. And I think long term I was vindicated there. People did find it difficult to pick up and play, and I would agree, it was supposed to be. It wasn't supposed to be something that anybody could just grab, because then it'd be incredibly overpowered. But it didn't take a lot to get very good at it, and the people who put in not even a huge amount of time did really discover that, hey, bit of practice and this is really good. This wouldn't have it any other way. So that's the exact same design philosophy that I carried through to to 83. Sorry.
I totally know what you mean, though. There's people
Exactly.
all the time, they're like, who's good at the helicopter? And they show off, because it's like, it almost feels way cooler when it's a hard piece of hardware to, like, it's hard to initially get in and fly it and be like a master at it, but if you put a little time in, you could like do some pretty cool stuff with it.
Well, the irony there is that a lot of the pushback, it was internally within the team at AMG back at that stage of development. I was like, I've got these helicopters. The helicopters suck. Why do the helicopters suck? Because no one's using them. So why is no one using them? Because the helicopters suck. It's like, guys, you see the problem here. You need to try and use them, and then we'll find out if they suck. And the people who, some of the people who were the most against them ended up being the people who were the best at it and the most for them by the time we shipped. So it was always nice for that to be to come around.
And then so in regards to I guess this is a nice segue. Like, what about like level design? So now we're not in the jungle anymore in Vietnam. We're not in like we're not necessarily in the Soviet front in World War II, but we are in Europe in a Cold War gone hot. So what is the design that you guys took to go like these would be like the locations we want ideally to be in a map setting where people can fight on?
Well, sounds like another one for Sturt here.
Sorry, Sturt.
Another question.
As a disgraced level designer, I can't comment on this. So.
I would like to just I'll start by saying I'm not a level designer. I can do it. I'm not good at it, and I certainly through the development of Rising Storm 2 and 83 knew nothing about level design at that time, other than high level. But what I will, to answer your question, basically, most of the levels, the location choices were actually determined a lot by a feature that's no longer in the game. So something that was talked about a lot previously in marketing was persistent warfare. And not a lot was said about that. The short version here is that it was supposed to be something quite a lot like what has ended up happening in Helldivers 2, with a persistent war and a lot of stuff that constantly changed control of areas with all servers globally contributing, and then that would adjust what bonuses you got, which teams got what, etc., etc. So the locations at that time had been chosen based around that. We needed them to be spread out. We needed it to fit nicely on a Europe map. And even the Europe setting was something we had to settle on a little while into development. Original proposals that had things like maps of troops landing in Miami and assaulting Cuba. It's just that it was too much work. It was too much to try and combine together. So we brought it down to Europe. But then we sort of looked at the map of Europe and went, well, if we've got a limited number of maps, where's going to make the most sense for this map to work out? And that factored a lot into which levels made the original shortlist. Now, because that features now, it's just not something that's feasible to deal with at present, that does give us a little bit more freedom with where levels are set. Some of them are still in flux, some of these things may change, but that's what made sense. If we're portraying a fictional Cold War gone hot, then where is that fighting going to occur? It's going to occur somewhere between the USSR and Western Europe. A lot of that's going to center through places like Germany, but does anybody want to play a game where every single level is in the German countryside? Probably not.
Probably not.
So, so that's why we opened that up a little. That's why a lot of things have been shown in marketing materials that people clearly can see. Hey, that's Ukraine. Hey, that's XYZ. So some of these locations do exist and would likely continue through, but some of them maybe they'll get changed. Some of them maybe it's just doesn't fit anymore, and it's time to do something a little different. It really comes down to art, without wanting to go too much into workflows and limitations, but every new location needs a whole unique set of art. This is Europe. The buildings are different, the roads are different, the signs are different, the foliage is different. It's a huge amount of work to do one map. So those are considerations that are being very much taken into account at the moment.
And that's not even taking into account the fact that the way you guys design your maps, they're not meant to be like these big sprawling, like Squad and. I know. I wanted to really bring this up. This is I thought it'd be a good segue. So the question is like you guys are doing all these historical locations, right? But how do you reel it in to where you're not losing sight of the fun of the game? Because people hate walking simulators. We all accept that.
Yeah,
right?
well, that's exactly it. I mean, one of the main. I mean, you get your big sprawling games. You get your Armour 3, you get your Hell Let Loose, you get your Squad and stuff like that. And those games are good at what they do. Unfortunately for players such as myself, what they do is I spawn, somebody's just jumped into a truck and driven off without me, and I've got a 4 or 5 minute hike ahead of me. The end result of which is I get shot in the head by the time I get to the battlefield and have to spawn again. It's a massive investment of time, frankly, and if I've got 3-4 hours to spend on playing a game, maybe a couple of rounds, that's great. If I want to get into the action a bit quicker, if I want to get all that good stuff, use all the realistic weapons and the commander functions, squad leader functions, and all this fun stuff, then we sort of feel that it's better to get players into that a lot quicker, to have a round decided in, say, about 30 minutes. I think for us that's going to be the sweet spot there, is let's have rounds that last around 30 minutes. Let's say it's going to take no more than about 30 seconds to get into the battle, which gives you a little bit of a challenge, because if you've got vehicles and helicopters and stuff like that, you can go a hell of a long way in 30 seconds. Or in the 30 minutes you can cover a lot of ground. So the design principles, I guess, for 83 are going to be that you have your infantry fighting over a set of objectives, kind of map center, but there are an awful lot of flanking opportunities. But I think the other thing as well, in order to prevent it from just being a grind, where you've got, say, a straight line of caps, and you've just got to grind backwards and forwards along that line, is that there are plenty of flanking opportunities. One of the main sort of design principles is, it's about getting from end to end. How you get there doesn't matter so much, so long as you're able to, if you like, draw a straight line from your base to the enemy base. And there are a variety of ways of doing that, but it does mean that you can, if you get it right, if you get your vehicles lined up correctly, use your armor to support you in the correct way, then you can get a very decisive thrust quite quickly. And so it's a lot more tactical there, and I think that's one of the things that people liked about Rising Storm, liked about Rising Storm 2, is this interplay between the vehicles and also the command structure, your commanders and your squad leaders. A team that has a commander who knows what they're doing and that has squad leaders that are able to cooperate with the commander and keep their own guys in line is going to win 9 times out of 10.
All right, and then let's reel it back a little bit. So, since this is I think a lot of people are going to ask, I'm saving this to the end. For everybody who's curious, what happened in the period between the IP being kind of in limbo to now?
From the time that there was an announcement of it being, you're talking about when it was shelved?
Yeah, well, let's talk. We can start wherever you guys want to start. I think this is just a question a lot of people want to know, including myself, honestly.
There was a long period there, close to a year, where I was still working actively on 83, but nobody else. That was after the official shelving of the game. So that's when IGI was, when the entire studio was pivoted to. I was left on 83 as the lead. I was the product owner, I was the lead of that game, and so I was left working on it basically to keep it ticking over a little bit and to keep the community consultation going, and just to show we were still there and we were still thinking of it, and we still wanted it to continue. It was something that wasn't cancelled, it was on ice essentially, and so I did continue to make small adjustments and improvements to the game, but one person doesn't get too far on something that large. And that basically kept going until the start of 2023, when I was moved on to take over the lead role for IGI. And at that point, nothing happened on 83. There was a brief moment there where we had some interest from a publisher. I won't say which publisher. They're certainly well known and they have an interest in the space. We did put in a little bit of effort over a month or two to bring it to a state where we could demonstrate to that publisher in the hopes that they would take it over. And it came very close. In the end, it didn't happen, as they ended up being more interested in IGI. But the deal didn't occur, unfortunately.
Right, which is where I can pick it up because, I'd heard that it was likely that AMG was going to shut down, and that the IP was likely to be up for grabs as well. And I felt that was a terrible shame. There was a game which, is the kind of spiritual successor to some fairly successful and quite well respected titles there, which had already, been released. We put the team together. We got as many people interested as we can from the former AMG staff. A lot of those people went on to Behaviour Interactive, but quite a lot didn't as well. Significantly, some fairly senior people as well that were involved in the development in one way or another of 83. So, yeah, we put together the company, myself and Chris Rickard, who isn't on this call sadly, but he
on the next one.
Oh, he'll be on the next one.
Next
Good.
One.
Yeah. So yeah, we put together the company. We started talking to lots of publishers about 83, and then 2023-24 happened. The games industry pretty much imploded. You know, you've seen a massive layoffs all across the industry. A lot of companies taking the opportunity to trim down, let's say, to streamline their studios, and a lot of investors getting incredibly gun shy. That's been pretty much the pattern over the last year. It's incredibly frustrating for us because, of course, you know, we've got a game on which a lot of the work has already been done. We've got a game for which a lot of the original team, particularly at senior levels, are here and ready to start work again. But we've got an industry which isn't really, well, last year in particular, wasn't really ready to support that. Now, there are signs that publishers, that investors are starting to come out of their bunkers, if you like, and that, well, you know, it makes sense. You've got a lot of publishers who, for 12 months, haven't really wanted to back anything. And now they're looking at their inventories going, damn, you know what, we've got nothing to release in 2025. So, you know, I'd say that things are beginning to look up there, and it's just a matter of basically keeping the flame alive. And so, despite the fact that we've essentially got zero budget at the moment, a lot of people were saying, do you know what, I want to volunteer, I want to help out here. And we're talking about professionals from fairly high level in the industry. Some of them I can't name because they are involved in the industry in various forms, and it might not go too well if their identity were revealed. But basically, we've got people pitching in now, and we've got things happening. We've had help refining the prototyping. You know, I mentioned earlier about these levels, about the kind of gameplay we need to achieve to get this goal of 30-minute round time and, you know, 30 seconds time to engagement and cut and thrust kind of tactical maneuvers. That needs a lot of honing. You know, that's not something that happens overnight. That needs to be play tested and play tested again and again. And we're in a position now where we can do that. And I just want to give a shout out to the testers here. We've got a large team of testers. We've got hundreds of volunteer testers who are helping us with this and who will be very soon getting their hands on some Unreal Engine 5 goodness. And so we've got that, and we're able to engage with publishers, with investors, etc. as well, and say, look, here's the gameplay. Here's how we're going to be different. Here's how we're going to occupy our space in the sort of mil-sim to Twitch shooter kind of spectrum. Here's how we're going to find that sweet spot where you get the realism you want, but you also get the fun that you want as well. So, you know, we're moving up to that stage right now. And that has, I have to say, that has mostly been down to our volunteers. One of the benefits as well of this kind of recent kind of meltdown of the games industry is that, very sadly, I mean, I say a benefit, it's a strange way of looking at it. You've got a lot of people out of work, and, you know, we're talking about tens of thousands of talented game developers. It's been a bloodbath, essentially. And there are a lot of these people available now. So, you know, from my perspective, kind of strategically, what happens here is we get the best possible representation of what we want to do in Unreal Engine 5 in front of people. We say, look, here we are. This is something we know how to do. This is something we've been doing for, you know, over 12 years. Various members of the team. Let's do it. And you know, when that investment comes in, and I think it will, it's a matter of time. Then we're able to say to these people, you know, we're here, we've got this title, let's get this one out the door, let's get it out to the public. There is a definite demand, I think, for this kind of game amongst the community of first-person shooter multiplayer kind of fans. let's get it in front of them, and it won't necessarily be that long. You know, the game is. It's not amazingly far off of release. This isn't one of these things where, you know, it's all, you know, we get investment and then we go quiet again for 3 years. That's not the case. It's definitely going to be quicker than that. So that's where I think we are at the moment, and that's where I think, you know, that's, if you like, that's the future of 83 there.